Commitment or a promise is a major deposit, breaking one is a major withdrawal. In fact, there's probably not a more massive withdrawal than to make a promise that's important to someone and then not to come true. The next time a promise is made, then won't believe it. People tend to build their hopes around promises, particularly promises about their basic livelihood. I've tried to adopt a philosophy as a parent never to make a promise I don't keep. I therefore try to make them very carefully, very springly, and to be aware of as many variables and contingencies as possible so that something doesn't suddenly come up to keep me from fulfilling it. Occasionally, despite all my efforts, the unexpected does come up, creating a situation where it would be unwise or impossible to keep a promise I've made, but I value that promise. I either keep it anyway or explain the situation thoroughly to the person involved and ask to the release from the promise. I believe that if you cultivate the habit of always keeping the promises you make, you build bridges of trust that span the gap of understanding between you and your child. Then when your child wants to do something you don't want him to do, and out of your maturity you can see consequences that the child cannot see, you can see soon. If you do this, I promise you that this will be the result. If that child has cultivated trust in your words, in your promises, he will act on your counsel. Clarify expectation. Imagine the difficulty you might encounter if you and your boss had different assumptions regarding whose role it was to create your job description. When I'm going to get my job description, you might ask. I've been waiting for you to bring one to me so that we could discuss it. Your boss might reply, I thought defining my job was your role. That's not my role at all. Don't you remember right from the first I said that how you do in the job largely depends on you. I thought you meant that the quality of my job depended on me. I don't even know what my job really is. I did exactly what you asked me to do, and here is the report. I don't want report. The goal was to solve the problem, not to analyze it and report on it. I thought the goal was to get handle on the problem so we could delegate it to someone else. How many times have we had these kinds of conversation? You said, no, you are wrong. I said, you did it. You never said I was supposed to. Oh, yes, I did. I clearly said. You never even mentioned, but that was our agreement. The cause of almost all relationship difficulties is rooted in conflicting or ambiguous expectation around rules and goals, whether we are dealing with the questions of who does what what at work, how you communicate with your daughter when you tell her to clean her room or feed the fish and take out the garbage. We can be certain that unclear expectation will lead to misunderstanding, disappointment, and withdrawals of trust. Many expectations are implicit, they haven't been explicit, stated, or announced. But people nevertheless bring them to a particular situation in marriage, for example, a man and a woman who implicit expectation of each other in their marriage rules, although these expectations have not been discussed or sometimes even recognized by the person who has them, fulfilling them, making great deposit in the relationship, and violating them makes withdrawal. That's why it's so important when ever you come into a new situation to get all the expectation out on the table. People will begin to judge each other through those expectation, and if they feel like their basic expectation has been violated, the reserve of trust is diminishes. We create many negative situations by simply assuming that our expectations are self-evident and that they are clearly understood and shared by other people. The deposit is to make the expectation clear and explicit in the beginning. This take a real investment of time and effort up front, but it saves great amounts of times and effort down the road. When expectations are not clear and shared, people begin to become emotionally involved and simply misunderstanding become compounded, turning into personality clashes and communication breakdown. Clarifying expectations sometimes takes a great deal of courage. It seems easier to act as though difference doesn't don't exist and to hope things will work out than it is to face the difference and work together to arrive at mutually agreeable set of expectation. Showing personal integrity. Personal integrity generates trust and is the basic basis of different kinds of deposit. Lacks of integrity can undermine almost any other efforts to create high trust accounts. People can seek to understand, remember the little things, keep their promises, clarify and fulfill expectation, and still fail to build a reserve of turf if they are inwardly duplicitous. Integrity includes but goes beyond honesty. Honesty is telling the truth. In other words, confirming our words is reality. Integrity is confirming reality to our words. In other words, keeping promises and fulfilling expectation. This require an integrated character, a oneness primarily with self but also with life. One of the most important ways to manifest integrity is to be loyal to those who are not present. In doing so, we build the trust of those who are present. When you defend those who are absent, you retain the trust of those present. Suppose you and I were talking alone and we were criticizing our supervisor in a way that we would not dare to if he were present. Now what will happen when you and I have a falling out? You know I'm going to be discussing your weaknesses with someone else, that what you and I did behind our supervisor back. You know my nature, I'll sweet talk you to your face and badmouth you behind your back. You seen you have seen me do it. That's the essence of duplicity. Does the build a reserve of trust in my account with you? On the other hand, suppose you were to start criticizing our supervisor and I basically told you I agree with the content of some of the criticism and suggest that the the two of us go directly to him and makes an effective presentation of how things might be improved. Then what would you know I would do if someone were criticizing you to be behind your back? For another example, suppose in my effort to build a relationship with you, I told you something someone else had shared with me in confidence. I really shouldn't tell you this. I might say, but since you are my friend, would my betraying another person build my trust account with you, or would you wonder if the things you had told me in confidence were being shared with others? Such duplicity might appear to be making a deposit with the person you with, but it's actually a withdrawal because you communicate your own lack of integrity. You may get the golden egg of temporary pleasure from putting someone down or sharing privileged information, but you are strangling the goose, weakening the relationship that provides enduring pleasures in association. Integrity is an interdependent reality in simply this: You treat everyone by the same asset of principle as you do. People will come to trust you. They may not at first appearance. The honest confrontational experience such integrity might generate confrontation, take consideration considerable courage, and many people would prefer to take the course of least resistance, belittling and criticizing, betraying confidence, or participating in gossip about others behind their back. But in the long run, people will trust and respect you if you are honest and open and kind with them. You care enough to confront and to be trusted. It is said is greater than to be loved. In the long run, I am convinced to be trusted will be also mean to be loved. When my son Joshua was quite young, he would frequently ask me a soul searching questions whenever I overreacted to someone else or was the least bit impatient or unkind. He was so vulnerable and so honest, and our relationship was so good that he would simply look me in the eye and say, "That Dad, do you love me?" If he thought I was breaking a basic principles of life towards someone else, he wondered if I wouldn't break it with him. As a teacher, as well as parent, I have found that the key to 99 is the one, particularly the one that is testing the patience and the good humor of the many. It is the love and the discipline of the one student, the one child that communicates love for the others. It's how you treat the one that reveals how you regard the 99, because everyone is ultimately a one. Integrity also means avoiding any communication that is deceptive, full of guile, or beneath the dignity of people. A lie in any communication with intent to deceive, according to one definition of the word. Whether we communicate with words or behavior, if we have integrity, our intent cannot be to deceive. Apologizing sincerely when you make a withdrawal. When we make withdrawal from the emotions bank account, we need to apologize. We need to do it sincerely. Great deposit come in the sincere words. I was wrong. That was unkind of me. I showed you no respect. I gave you no dignity, and I am deeply sorry. I am embarrassed you in front of your friends, and I had no call to do that. Even though I wanted to make a point, I never should have done it. I apologize. It takes a great deal of character strength to apologize quickly out of the one hurts rather than out of the pity. A person must possess himself and have a deep sense of security in fundamental principles and values in order to genuinely apologize. People with a little internal security can't do it. It makes them too vulnerable. They feel it makes them appear soft and weak, and they fear that others will take advantage of their weakness. Their security is based on the opinions of other people, and they worry about what other might think. In addition, they usually feel justified in what they did. They rationalize their own wrongs in the name of the other person wrong, and if they apologize at all, it's superficial. If you are going to bow low, say stern wisdom, pay the uttermost farthing, say the Christian ethic, to be a deposit, an apology must be sincere, and it must be perceived as sincere. Lew Rosking thought, "It's the weak who are cruel. Gentleness can only be expected from the strong." I was in my office at home one afternoon writing of all things on the subject of patience. I could hear the boys running up and down the hall making loud banging noises, and I could feel my own patience beginning to wane. Suddenly, my son David started pounding on the bathroom door, yelling at the top of his lungs, "Let me in! Let me in!" I rushed out of the office and spoke to him with great intensity. "David, do you have any idea how disturbing that is to me? Do you know how hard it is to try to concentrate and write creatively? Now you go into your room and stay in there until you can behave yourself." So in he went, dejected, and shut the door. As I turned around, I became aware of another problem. The boys had been playing tackle football in the 4 foot widely hallway, and one of them had been elbow in the mouth. He was lying there in the hall, bleeding from the mouth. David, I discovered, had gone to the bathroom to get a wet towel for him. But his sister Maria, who was taking a shower, wouldn't open the door. When I realized that I had completely misinterpreted the situation and had overreacted, I immediately went to apologize to David. As I opened the door, the first thing he said to me was, "I won't forgive you." "Well, why not, honey?" I replied. "Honestly, I didn't realize you were trying to help your brother. Why won't you forgive me?" "Because you did the same thing last week," he replied. In other words, he was saying that you are overdrawn and you are not going to talk your way out of a problem you behave yourself into. Sincere apologies make deposit, and repeated apologies interpreted as insincere make withdrawals, and the quality of the relationship reflected. It is a one thing to make a mistake and quite another things not to admit it. People will forgive mistake because mistakes are usually of the mind, mistake of judgment, but people will not easily forgive the mistake of the heart, the ill intention, the bad motive, the prideful justification cover up the first mistake. The laws of love and the laws of life. When we make deposit of unconditional love, when we live the primary law of love, we encourage others to live the primary law of life. In other words, when we truly love others without condition, without strings, we help them feel secure and safe and validated and affirmed in their essential worth, identified and integrity. Their natural growth process is encouraged. We make it easier for them to live the law of life, cooperation, contribution, self discipline, integrity, and to discover the life true to the highest and the best within them. We give them the freedom to act on their own inner imperative rather than react to our conditions and limitations. This does not mean we become permissive or soft. That itself is a massive withdrawal. We counsel, we plead, we set limits and consequences, but we love regardless. When we violate the primary law of love, when we attach strings and conditions to the gift, we actually encourage others to violate the primary law of life. We put them in a reactive defensive position where they feel they have to prove I matter as a person independent of you. In reality, they aren't independent, they are counter dependent, which is another form of dependency and is the lowest end of the maturity continuum. They become reactive, almost enemy centered, more concerned about defending their rights and producing evidence of their individuality than they are about proactively listening to and harnessing their own inner imperative. Rebellion is a knock of the heart, not of the mind. The key is to make deposit, constant deposit of unconditional love. I once had a friend who was dean of a very prestigious school. He planned and saved for years to provided his son the opportunity to attend that institution, but when the time came, the boy refused to go. This deeply concerned his father. Graduating from that particular schools would have been a great asset to the boy. Beside, it was a family tradition. Three generations of attendance preceded the boy. The father pleaded and urged and talked. He also tried to listen to the boy to understand him, all the while hoping that the son would change his mind.